Hello, my name is Ariele Sieling, and as part of the Right Women's Book Fest, today I'm going to be talking about creativity in times of stress. You can learn more about the Right Women's Book Fest at www.therightwomenbookfest.org. And you can learn more about me at arielsieling.com. I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer primarily. You can see on this side, bad at direction here. Tentacles and Teeth is the first book in my post-apocalyptic sci-fi with monsters. And then my other main series is Rove City, which is a series of fairy tales in space. Each fairy tale features a different fairy tale main character. So today, creativity and stress, I think, is a relatively relevant topic, given that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and there are also a lot of other things that might be stressing you or me out in the grand scheme of things. So I like to structure this conversation around a metaphor. And the metaphor is of a hot coal. So your creativity is a hot coal, and stress is water. It might be rain, it might be a bucket of water, but essentially the hot coal and stress, they don't necessarily mix. I think that in the pandemic, given the pandemic and all the other things that have been going on, it can be easy to sort of neglect our creativity. It's sort of, if you think of it as a fire, it sort of burns down. Our attention and our focus are elsewhere, they're on other things. And so it can be hard to, nurture your creativity when there's so many other things vying for your attention. But there are a few things that you can do to take care of your fire, your creative coal, despite everything else that's going on. And one of the things I try to do with all of these tips that I'm going to talk through today is try to keep them really simple, because I think one of the problems is it always just feels like, there's always another trick, and there's always another shortcut, and there's always another thing out there to take our attention. But sometimes all of these things just seem so overwhelming. It's like, I don't have time to learn how to do this thing. I don't have time to start a new project. I don't have the energy or the motivation to do all of these things. So I'm going to try to give a range of tips that go, whether you're someone whose coal, it seems like it's completely out, like you just have nothing left to give, all the way right up until, you feel like you're doing okay, but maybe you're just not as productive as you have been, or you just wish you had more to give to your art or to whatever it is that you love. So hopefully there'll be a pretty wide range of things in this workshop. And so hopefully at the end, you'll be able to find something that you are willing or interested in trying to start getting that fire burning again. So the first tip is more of a way of thinking about it than anything. But the first thing is to remember that productivity is not creativity. These two things do not mean the same thing. I think there is a lot of overlap potentially, because a lot of people's preferred version of creativity sort of involves making things, right? Producing things. And if you look it up, the to produce and to create are technically synonyms, but they're synonyms. They do not mean the same thing. So what's the difference? Great question. Thank you for asking. To create something, or let me back up a little. Creativity as a whole is the use of imagination or original ideas. And then in the dictionary it says especially in producing an artistic work. But the actual definition of creativity is to use your imagination or an original idea. And this can take place in so many different ways. I like to think of, my favorite example is that doing math can be creative. I mean, the entirety of mathematics seems like this very logical, especially to someone who likes to write and doesn't like numbers. It seems like this very logical and non-creative type of thing because there's just all these systems. But every push forward that we've made as a society in mathematics has been because of creativity. It's because somebody took a problem, took an equation, and thought about it from an original angle. They took an original idea and applied it to whatever mathematical problem that they were trying to solve. So creativity and productivity are not the same thing. So if you're not being productive and you want to be more productive, that's a little bit of a different problem than not being creative. So I think it's important to, sit back for a minute and think, am I not being creative or am I not being productive? And the strategies for those two things are definitely going to be a little bit different. And of course, I'm focusing on creativity here. Back to my metaphor. The way I like to think about it in terms of the hot coal or the hot fire is that you can have a hot coal, or you can have a hot fire, and you can use it to cook something. But if you're not using the fire to cook something, it's still a hot fire. It's still a hot coal. It's still there. It's just not being used to produce something. Does that make sense? All right. So that's my first tip. Productivity is not creativity. Tip number 2 is to start small. This one I think is also really important. So let's imagine for a second that you are camping. You're out in the wilderness and you're alone and you have a small fire and you fall asleep. And when you wake up, it turns out it rained while you were asleep. And now all you have left is a few hot coals buried underneath a bed of ash. And you need to start a fire for whatever, to cook or because you're cold, whatever. What do? Well, what you don't do is throw a large log on the coal because the log will not catch fire. It just won't. Instead, you need to start small. You need to find small things that are highly flammable, and you need to toss them on the hot coal and to create a little bit of flame. Maybe dry leaves if you can find any, if after the rain, maybe sawdust if you have some, maybe fire starter if you have it, maybe, twigs, whatever you have. And then you can go from there. So if you're just trying to get your creativity restarted, you can start small. If you want to write a novel, that's great. But having written 20 plus novels myself, I can guarantee you that jumping into a brand new full-length 80,000 word manuscript when you barely have enough energy to get out of bed in the morning is a really good way to not restart your fire. So what does it look like? What does it look like feeding your creativity's hot coal? So I think the trick here is it's easy to say do something small, but I think that the key is actually to do something that is easy and that you also enjoy. And this means that that's going to vary person to person. It depends on who you are and what you like to do and what you already know how to do. So do something that's easy and that you enjoy. So some examples of what that might look like. You could maybe like gardening. Maybe you go out when you weed for a few minutes or you plant some new flowers. Maybe you like coloring. Adult coloring books are great. They're really easy. All you need is pencils or crayons or whatever. Honestly, you could do an entire coloring book in a black marker if you wanted to. Just color. Super easy, and if you enjoy it, it'll make you feel like you're engaging in something creative, but that doesn't have any pressure associated. There's no expectations tied to it. Maybe you like taking pictures. You can just go for a walk and take pictures of something. They don't have to be good. They don't have to be beautiful. You don't have to share them on Instagram if you don't want to. You could just take pictures for the sake of taking pictures. I can't read my handwriting. It looks like training, but that doesn't make sense. Whatever. Go for a walk. We're just gonna skip right to the next one. Go for a walk. Meditation is really good for some people. And particularly, I think meditating on the idea of creativity or meditating on a creative idea that you have, I think are a good way to approach this. Maybe like baking or cooking, knitting or crocheting. These are all examples of things that I personally, I don't know how to knit. So trying to knit would be like a huge step for me. I'd have to learn like a whole new thing, and that would not restart my fire. But what I do like to do is sometimes just grab a sketchbook and do some quick sketches. I really like walking. I like taking pictures. Sometimes I'll go for a walk and I'll just take pictures of trees for an hour. And these are the sort of things that I can do. Now, this presentation is geared towards writers. So let's talk about a few things that you can do as a writer to sort of feed that fire, things that are small. I like to joke that my absolute least favorite writing exercise on the whole planet is free writing, because it is. I hate free writing, and I particularly dislike it if I'm in like a group setting, like if I'm going to a workshop and the facilitator says, okay, now everybody free write for 5 minutes. I literally have pages and pages of notebooks that just say, I hate free writing. Free writing is the worst. I can't believe another workshop facilitator is making me free write for 5 minutes. And it's so funny because when I go home and I'm actually sitting down on my computer and struggling to like actually get my brain working and functioning, free writing is like one of the things that I do. And it's to the point where I pretty much only have to free write like, I don't know, 3 sentences before it's like my brain clicks into place and suddenly, I'm good to go. But free writing is a really great way to do the, get your coal burning a little bit hotter. It's easy. It doesn't require anything. I mean, you can free write by hand. You could free write in your brain without actually writing anything down if you wanted to. There's no expectations. Nobody expects you to be posting your free writing exercises on the internet. Nobody wants to read them because usually free writing isn't great. So free writing, it's probably the first one that I would put for the easiest. Also, it doesn't matter what genre you write. It doesn't matter, where you are. It's something that you can do anywhere, anytime. And you can do it for 1 minute, You can also do a writing prompt. Tons of writing prompt generators on the internet. Also, if you ever need a prompt, just message me and I will give you a prompt. I'm very good at coming up with them. I never use them myself, almost ever, but I can come up with one in about 2 seconds. So, writing prompts. Write a poem or a list. I actually find lists to be really helpful. I usually try to, when I'm struggling to, get motivated or feed my creativity, I actually find that if I write a list focused, sort of related to whatever I'm trying to work on, that can also be really helpful. In the instance that I'm feeling really stressed, I might literally write down a list of things that I'm stressed about. If I'm feeling like blocked from being creative, I might write a list of things that are getting in the way, like my cat meowing and scratching at the door to get into my office. Also poems. I'm not really a poet. But I have what I call my small book of poems by Ariel. It's just a little notebook, and whenever I'm feeling like if an emotion is sort of keeping me from engaging in my creativity, then a lot of times I'll go and I'll write like a short poem about anything, honestly. And I think doing like the opposite of what you might normally do is good too. So if you're like me and you're a prose person, write a poem. If you're a poem person, maybe try writing some prose. What else do I have on my list? Change your font. This is so dumb, but sometimes changing your font, it's like a weird brain hack, and it just makes you think about what you're looking at differently. You can also change the color, change the size, change the program that you're working in. Those sorts of things they feel a little bit different, and so they might trigger more creativity. Journaling. I think a lot of people find this one particularly happy, especially as a regular thing. I believe it's called Morning Pages, is a really popular one for memoir writers specifically. So you could try journaling. At the beginning of the pandemic, I actually had a quarantine journal that I kept for a while. Eventually, I realized that the journaling was stressing me out more than it was helping, so I stopped. It was more like a doom journal. But I think journaling can definitely help. It's sort of like feeding the fire just a little bit every day. Even if you just write 2 sentences, I think journaling can be a really good sort of ongoing exercise. Learn a new word. I really like this one. I don't do it as often as I would like to, but sometimes just learning a new word and then thinking about how it applies in different areas of your life. A really easy way to do this is dictionary.com has a word of the day every day. So you can just log on, see what their word of the day is, and then think about it all day. You can also do any other creative activity related to your work in progress. So maybe you draw a picture of a scene in your work in progress. Maybe you plant a flower that your main character really likes. Maybe you sing a song about your current creative endeavor. And a lot of times these sorts of activities can get the creative juices flowing, even if you're not actually writing anything. Because again, productivity is not creativity. So yeah, tip 2, start small. Tip number 3, scale. So this builds a lot off of breaking it down or starting small. But the thing about writing in particular is that the projects are absolutely massive. My brother and I talk about this sometimes. He's a music producer in Nashville, and so his entire job is songs, right? And songwriting. A musician can literally write a song, record the song in a day, and have a song produced even within 2 days, and ready to just share. Now, doing a whole album, of course, is a different thing. But with writing, a lot of times, the projects feel so big. They just feel like immense, you know? My manuscripts tend to be 80,000 words long. 80,000 words is a lot. Let's see. I write, my fastest speed ever was like 12, I'm misremembering this, but we'll just say 1,200 words in 20 minutes. Or I can't do that math in my head per minute, but anyway, we'll say 1,200 words in 20 minutes. That's a lot, but that's my fastest ever. Normally, I would say I write roughly 500 words in 20 minutes, which is 1,500 words an hour, but that's only if I'm like feeling really productive and I know where I need to go and I know what's happening and I'm like in a good groove. I just as often have hours where I will write 100 words, you know, in an hour. And if you're trying to get to 80,000 words and you're writing 100 words an hour, it's such a time investment, and it just seems like it takes so long. And if you add in other steps like having to do research, or, you know, figure out how a thing works, plotting and ideation, writing a book is a lot. It's huge. So the question becomes, how do you scale? And if you're trying to stoke your creativity, the flames of creativity, I find personally that it's best to forget about the novel for the time being and to start small. So what I like to do is to break down whatever I'm working on into tiny pieces, and that way I can scale it. And in fact, I did this today. I have 3 novellas that I'm working on in the Rove City series, and I just, you know, I need to get them done. And this, of course, gets into productivity as opposed to creativity. But I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with one of them. And I was feeling really frustrated about it. And my original plan was to try to like read through the whole manuscript today. It's 30,000 words, so it's easily done in a day, and fix it. But I couldn't figure out what was wrong. So that's a creativity problem. And so what I ended up doing was I read 1 chapter of that manuscript, and then I read one chapter of a different manuscript, and then I read one chapter of a different manuscript, all in the same series. And I said, I'm just going to break this down into easily digestible chunks, one chapter. And it's like, I don't know, 1,200 words, 1,300 words. And I'm going to do it on 3 different books. They're all in the same series, so they're related. And then tomorrow, I'm going to do that again. And it'll take me a couple hours, and then I'll go work on other stuff, like making this video for the rest of the day. And that is frequently how I push myself forward, first of all. Become more productive, second of all. And thirdly, it's how I become more creative, because creativity is my entire job. I have to not only produce work, but I have to be creative. Creativity for me comes before productivity. I cannot be productive and I cannot achieve the things that I need to achieve unless my creativity is hot in a hot burning fire. So breaking a project down, or breaking an idea down, or breaking an action down into tiny steps, little steps, can really, really help sort of feed that creative fire a little bit at a time. So I gave you an example of editing, but another way to look at it is, for a writer, is maybe you say to yourself, I'm going to write 10 words a day. I'm going to write 50 words a day, and that's it. And 10 words is pretty doable for most people, I would say. 50 words is pretty doable. Even 100 words is pretty doable. Just do a little bit every day. If you wrote 100 words a day for 10 days, you would have 1,000 words. And 1,000 words is 1/80th of 80,000 words. So just think about whatever it is that you want to do, whatever your creative, direction that you're trying to go in is, and think to yourself, how can I break this down into tinier and tinier steps? And then you can scale. So maybe you write 10 words one day, but you write 20 words the next day. Or maybe you plan on writing 10 words, but you actually write 20. Or maybe you plan on writing 100, and then you get into it and suddenly you end up with 500. This happens to me a really lot, actually. Last week I was like, I want to write 5,000 words this one day this week. It was like a Tuesday, and so I was like, but I need to work up to it. So today I'm gonna aim for 1,000, and then I wrote 7,000 that one day. Keep in mind, I just want to throw this out there. This is my job. This is what I do every day. So please don't be like, oh my God, I can't write 7,000 words in a day. It's okay. I actually very rarely can do that. I think that would be in my top 10 for word count for a day. So, sorry, I feel like I'm going to stress you out more by most days I can barely push out 1,000 words, and this is my full-time job. This is what I do every day, all the time. I guarantee you, if you didn't have a full-time job or 3 kids or whatever, you'd find it a lot easier to write more words. Promise. All right. The last piece I have in this particular tip, breaking it down and then scaling it, is to give yourself permission to take it slow. I think there is a lot of pressure in the writing community to write a lot. It's like if you're not writing in bulk, then you're not a real writer, which is complete BS. If you're not writing fast, then it must mean that you're not a good writer. And that's completely false. I mean, completely false. I think I love NaNoWriMo, and I do it every year, but I think Nano has contributed a little bit to this idea. It's okay to write 10 words a day. It's okay to write 10 words a week. It's okay to write 10 words a month. The only thing that makes you a writer is the fact that you're writing, is the fact that you want to write even, is the fact that you have written. So give yourself permission to slow down, take it one bite-sized chunk at a time, because it goes back to the analogy of throwing a log on the fire. I have literally put fires out by throwing a log on the fire. So scale. Start with your fire, sprinkle it with, whatever you need to do to start feeling creative again. with your little tiny pieces of sawdust. Add some twigs, add some slightly larger logs, and then eventually maybe you can burn an entire tree. That, not literally. Don't go burning trees, please. It's probably not, it's not the safest idea. Not the best. Okay. Let's go on to tip number 4, which is literally what I just said. Don't rush. Give yourself permission to take it slow. I mean this very specifically, though. Sometimes I create for the sake of creating. And I will be like, oh, I just don't feel creative. I need to create something. So I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to create something. I'm just going to make it. And I'll get out my sketchbook and I'll scribble a picture. And then I hate it. Inevitably, I hate whatever I made because I just rushed through it. I created for the sake of creating and not for the sake of building my creative fire, or not with a particular, intention behind it. Sometimes this trick works. Okay, sometimes I sit down and I'm like, I'm going to create for the sake of creating, and I make a beautiful drawing and I'm so excited and happy with it. Or it triggers another thought and then I move to my computer and I sit down and I write for a while and I'm really happy with what I wrote. But just as often, it does the opposite. It makes me feel like crap, and then I can't do anything and I get grumpy. So what I've been doing recently, and this is actually new for me, pandemic time, I started doing this in March, was basically saying I will take it slow and I will finish a thing. And I say this with small things because I think saying I will finish this novel, sometimes that can take 15 years and sometimes that's important and what needs to happen. But I also think that it's important to feel free to work on other projects if you want to. But what I would do is I pick something not writing related. So maybe it's wood burning or drawing or painting or gardening or whatever. And I would say, I'm going to do this one thing and then I'm going to finish it. And I am going to finish it with intention. So what this looks for me is, if you actually go on my Instagram account, you'll see a series of stories that are all art, quarantine art, I call them. And my goal was, I have this page and I'm going to finish this page. That's it. Whether it takes me a week or 2 weeks or whatever, I'm going to finish this page. And now, because it's been months, I have almost an entire sketchbook filled with finished pages. And what I learned, because I was forcing myself to just follow through with whatever idea that I had, is that when something is half done, it sucks. Like, I would be working through this drawing and I would be like, I hate this. Like, why am I even continuing? Like, why am I even doing this? It's so ugly. And then I'd be like, just follow the rules. You have to fill the page. And so I would continue doing whatever. And then by the time it was done, I would sort of step back and I would look at the whole page and I would realize, oh, that thing that I hated about this 20 minutes ago or an hour ago or 4 days ago, I don't even see it anymore. It's like not even there because I finished. I don't know if that's helpful. But I really think that taking the time to not rush and finish whatever it is really important. And that might mean finishing a chapter if you're writing. Maybe it means finishing a poem. And maybe it means finishing for the sake of finishing without it being good, I think that's one of the reasons why you always hear people say, don't edit while you're writing. Because sometimes you just need to get to the end so that you can step back and see the whole picture of a thing. And I think that what this does in terms of sparking creativity is a few things. First of all, it helps you realize that actually, yes, you can finish something. And second, there's sort of like a rush I get, at least, when I finish a thing. Whether it's a rough draft or the next draft or the next draft. There's just this feeling of like elation. It's like, wow, I did this thing. And maybe it's not perfect and maybe people will hate it. And, maybe it could be better. But like, I did this thing and I completed this thing. And that always, always, always makes me want to do more. It makes me want to be more creative. It makes me want to pursue other things and start new projects. So don't rush, follow through, and let yourself enjoy the process and completing of a project. And I think that can really help. At the same time, I want to say that it's also okay to step back away from your creativity. It's okay to not be creative. And I think this is a really important in particularly moments like these in life, moments like 2020, you know, with murder hornets and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and the pandemic and crazy hurricanes and floods and really high unemployment and all of these things, schools closing, all of these things happening to us, you know, 2020. I think it's really important to also to know that it's okay to step back and it's okay to do other things. If you need to not be creative for a few months and to take care of your kids or to take care of an ill parent or to be sick, or maybe you need to take some time to focus on issues that are important to you. Maybe, maybe you want to be activist about a particular thing and all of your time and extra time and energy is going there. Or maybe you just need to take a bath, you know? Maybe you need to take care of your house. Maybe you need to take care of your kids. Or maybe you are going to be homeschooling, you know, this year. If you need to step back away from being creative and do something else, do it. It's okay. It's okay to not write. It's okay to not create. It doesn't make you less of a creative person. It doesn't make you not a real writer. I'm doing finger quotes if you can't see me. It's okay to focus on taking care of yourself and to taking care of your family and taking care of things that you need to take care of. Your creativity cannot thrive unless you also are thriving. So take care of yourself first. And just remember that your creativity and your creative coal isn't going anywhere. It'll be there when all of this passes, when the pandemic passes, when you're not homeschooling your kids anymore. Your creative coal will be there. It never goes out. No matter how much water gets dumped on it, it will still exist. It will still be there whenever you're ready to feed it. So that's all I have for today, for this particular workshop. I am also doing a couple of others. I did a marketing one. I'm saying this from the past. The marketing one will be live/was live earlier in this week. Sorry. Time travel, it's really complicated. And then also on Friday, fantasy tea time or something. I haven't planned it all out yet. But myself and several authors are going to be discussing fun fantasy stuff and giving some readings from some fantasy work. So hopefully you'll join us for that. Just as a reminder, this presentation was for the Right Women Book Fest. You can learn more about them at www.therightwomenbookfest.org, and you can learn more about me at www.arielsieling.com. And I think, the Right Women Book Fest is also on Instagram. I'm also on Instagram. In fact, this is all about creativity. I post a lot of stuff. I post a lot more art and photography on Instagram than I do writing related stuff. So if you're interested in that side of me, it's just at Ariele Sieling. So yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I literally have nothing else to say. I was going to say don't let your coal go out, but then I was like, wait a second. I literally just said your coal will never go out. So don't worry. Your coal will never go out. Thank you.